Good morning. Good Friday. It is a good Friday. I I don't know if you've this is a thing on like YouTube and podcasts. People do this. I don't quite understand why. Or they do this and it's a giant microphone. You just pop it down here. So I'm always entertained by that. So anyway, happy Friday to you. Cheers. I am already fully caffeinated. So this is a water session for me. And I am still dealing with the technical challenges of the Twitter streaming API. So I apologize for the duplicate tweets, but it doesn't render the preview unless I manually push a tweet, and then it renders the preview and makes my other tweet. Anyway, so still dealing with that. Hopefully they improve that experience. How's the lighting here? Okay, so let's just get on with it. DynamicsCon Live. So DynamicsCon has now wrapped up the virtual conference. So now we are moving on to DynamicsCon Live, which is an actual in-person event where humans are in a physical space together and can see each other and talk and interact in meet space, as it's called. And so this will be in Anaheim, California, November 10th and 11th. The actual sessions are on Thursday, November 11th. I believe I got that right. So if you are able to attend, the registration I don't believe is that expensive. Please register with the early bird pricing. And it's a reasonable deal for a full day conference and very nice hotel in beautiful Anaheim, California, home of Disneyland, of course. And yeah, I will be there, as will several other BC folks giving some nice presentations. So go for it. Okay. So this morning, I may have been working with a customer on a support case, and we were going to test with one transaction. Process as one transaction, figure out what the error was. Well, little did I know that over 100 more transactions had been added to the system before we clicked the go button. And rather than getting one error message, we got like 300 plus error messages. And I had to apologize to the poor accounting staff who were getting nonstop emails for about an hour. So that was my Friday morning before I had a full cup of coffee. But you know, it was just a bunch of emails, easily deleted. So in the grand scheme of things, not too bad, but we're all fallible. Yep. So that was an interesting lesson, but got it resolved, and I think they're in good shape, and hopefully they do not have more email errors, or errors for that matter. And can you believe I don't recognize this photo? That doesn't look like Britney Spears. I mean, I don't remember how old I was when that song came out. Oops, I did it again. But like looking at this photo, it's hard to imagine that's what she looked like back then. October 1st, and this snuck up on me. I got a couple emails about the release, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then I was looking at my automated email from my automated Docker container build script. So every morning I have a PowerShell script that runs on my Docker server, 6:45 a.m., and it builds several Docker containers for me, BC Docker containers. And what do you know? It showed me that the prior BC version was 18.5 and the new BC version was 19.0. I was like, oh, look at that. That's cool. So yes, we are officially in 19.0 territory now. Now these are the standard release images that I'm using for this particular container. I do have a BC Insider container that's been on 19.0 for quite a while, but now we're kind of officially released on 19.0. So that's pretty cool. And I'm going to research the timing of releases 18.4, 18.5, 19.0, because I've been tracking all of that in my Docker container builds for months now. So I'm going to see how long is it between releases, how much lead time do we have on BC Insider, things like that. But I will be paying attention to this release 19.0, 29.894, 30736. So from what I've seen, that build stays kind of static in production. However, with these BC containers, that number may increment. So that's what I'm kind of paying attention to, just checking how the numbers progress. Okay. And of course, Business Central 2021 Release Wave 2. I'm not a fan of that naming convention. Just call it 19 personally. But I'm sure there's some reason for that very, very long name. So in case you haven't heard, like I said, October 1st, and the big announcement is that BC 19 is now going to be rolling out. And I received an email, or there was something in the Yammer post that they are starting to schedule the rollout, and I think they're moving to a 60-day upgrade window now. That's what I glanced in a note. So I need to learn more about that. Previously, I think it was 30 days, something like that, where in Admin Center, you could manage when you wanted to upgrade. The link up at the top, BCLE, I believe that stands for BC Launch Event. And it looks like that's going to be the week of October 18th. I don't know if it's a single date or multiple days or how they're releasing that. And I believe that's a pre-recorded event like they've done previously. Very, very informative stuff, really deep dives. And so that's kind of a glimpse of the schedule. And they're going to have a bunch of sessions. So, yeah, I can't tell how many days. But anyway, registration is not yet open for that event. They'll presumably announce that when it is available. And if you want more information on the updates, you can go to aka.ms/BC updates. And you probably already know this. If you don't know about this new release and some of the features, get on Twitter is about all I can tell you. There's no shortage of excellent blog posts, articles, content about the new features. Sarov just had a blog post on kind of the release of BC 19. Yun Chu has had several, at least 6 different blog posts, or probably more, on the new BC 19 features, all sorts of cool stuff. API for sharing files in Microsoft 365. So I thought that was pretty cool. My good friend Tanya Henderson has a blog post on new BC features as well. She covers a few that she liked. And so, yeah, check it out. A lot of articles and discussion. I kind of gave up on new releases, new features, and that type of stuff just because it feels like a treadmill. I can barely keep up with the basics that I'm trying to learn. So, like, the new features are cool, but yeah, you got to draw the line somewhere. I've got way too much on my plate. But if you're into that, lots of content. In case you missed it, Kenny, I don't know if this is new, but there is a troubleshooting guide available on the GitHub, Microsoft BC Tech GitHub repository, where Kenny has posted KQL queries, which are the App Insights telemetry queries, and some Jupyter notebooks, which, if you're not familiar with notebooks, super, super cool. Like, when I saw that, I was like, that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So check them out. And this apparently is for App Insights telemetry and for validation. So if you submit something to AppSource and you get validation errors, or it fails due to a validation error, you can check out the telemetry and run these queries to determine get more information, basically. And if you are publishing to AppSource and you do not have your App Insights key in your app, definitely do that. Like, it just makes your life so much easier rather than seeing just an error message on the App Insights publishing portal or whatever it's called. So yeah, check that out. Pretty cool. I'm going to be playing with that to compare it to our app telemetry and just learn more about what we can see. And Docker. Specifically Docker Desktop. I don't know when 4.01 came out, relatively recently, I guess. I don't use Docker Desktop personally. I had it installed on my laptop. It was like 3.3, but I rarely use Docker on my laptop just because it's so cumbersome to deal with an update. But yeah, apparently Docker Desktop 4.01, and I don't know if this is specific to Docker Desktop 4.01 or if something changed with Windows or what happened. But if you look at this GitHub issue for BC Container Helper, which it's the repository is labeled Nav Container Helper. So go to GitHub, Nav Container Helper, look at the issues and find 2086. I looked into this because our developer couldn't create a new container. He was getting some just very, very generic, simple error, like, container failed. So we got on a call, we looked at it, and it's like, It was like no information. It just said error, failed with error -1. It's like, okay, we scanned the log, nothing else in the log, no clues, no OS version issues, nothing. And I think he was on the 20H4 or something like that build of Windows, if I'm not mistaken. And he tried 10 different things. We tried everything. We tried simplifying the new BC container helper script. We tried isolation Hyper-V, nothing. Exact same error. It just died as soon as the BC container helper script tried to actually create the container. Just immediately failed. So I checked in issues. I happened to see this, and I was like, and I'm reading it. It didn't look related. As I'm going down the list, it's like people are having all sorts of weird issues. And Freddie's like scrambling to try to figure out what's going on. And it's just, well, it's kind of similar, but different error message, slightly different behavior. Some very kind soul with very creative thinking process thought, well, what happens if I turn off Windows Defender on my laptop or Windows 10 machine? Like, would have never occurred to me for several reasons. But they figured out that when they turned off Windows Defender on their Windows 10 machine, BC Container Helper worked fine. It was able to create the container. Now, some people, this might not have worked, but it looks like several people, this is working for them. As soon as I saw that, our developer turned off Windows Defender. Container created perfectly, no issues. And then after creating the container, he was able to re-enable Windows Defender and everything is fine. So apparently what is happening is during the container creation, files are being copied or moved or whatever. And, if you've seen those files, they're probably pretty large. There's a lot going on. And something about that process Windows Defender is not liking, and so it's blocking or rolling back or inhibiting that process somehow, and that's just causing the container creation process to fail. So I don't know if it's a Docker thing, if it's just coincidence or something changed in Windows Defender, or if it's BC Container Helper is now triggering something. From what I've read in the comments from Freddie, I don't think he's doing anything particularly different, but just something is different on the Windows 10 Docker desktop, Windows Defender world. So this killed an entire day for our developer. And, he's like, what's going on? Like, we've done this plenty of times, nothing new, right? Well, it wasn't anything he was doing or we were doing differently. It was just this broke. And so I said, that's it. Like, I've seen enough about Docker desktop problems from other people, and Waldo's encountered them. Plenty of other people have encountered the issues. It's like, forget about it. Not worth the time. Lost an entire day of productivity because of this. And, he and I had to spend probably over an hour on the phone till we found this clue that thankfully someone posted in that the GitHub issue list. So Docker desktop is going to be gone. We're purchasing a new, just a reasonably high-end desktop. It'll be Windows Server 2019, and we'll be installing the Docker Enterprise on there, and that will be our developer's new Docker server. I don't have time for this. Docker is essentially a production environment for development for BC. You can use alternative environments, but like in terms of convenience and productivity and having multiple environments, like there's great benefits to it. But nope, I've never been a fan of Docker Desktop running in Windows 10. I don't think it's prudent for a real production development environment for me. I just don't have the time to waste. So we're just buying a desktop. It's probably going to be $1,500 to $2,000, but how many days of lost productivity before that starts to pay for itself? I've been running Server 2019 with Docker Enterprise for over a year. Every single morning, my Docker containers create flawlessly, super stable, rock solid. I don't have any of these issues. It's only when Windows Update does something wacky, and I know what that is, and I can easily fix that. So that's where I'm going with it. Speaking of Docker Enterprise, it's like try to make a move, checkmate, right? So Microsoft has essentially announced end of support by Microsoft for the whatever they call it. It's like the Microsoft Docker Enterprise, I don't know, whatever that module is where you install it via PowerShell. So they will no longer be offering their version of Docker Enterprise on Windows Server. Docker is currently owned, or Docker Enterprise Engine is owned by a company called Mirantis. They purchased it in 2019, late 2019, I think, like October. And they are restructuring. Obviously, they want to make money, which is fine. I totally get that. And if they are making it more stable and supportable and providing support, hey, more power to them. I'm totally cool with that. And so this is the announcement that Tobias found. And we are offering server container customers special offers until December 31st, 2021. So I'm going to contact them to figure out how to enroll in this. For 1 to 9 nodes, basic subscription, no support, valid until December 31st, 2023. So essentially 2 years, which is good. Email them at windows-offer@mirantis.com. So like I have a server, I assume that's a node. Our developer has a server, that would be a node, I'm guessing, unless that's number of containers. I'm not sure, I need to look into it. But for 10 to 27 nodes, there's basic subscription, no support, valid 1 year for $50 a node. And that is interesting. So it's $50 a node for 10 to 27 nodes, but no support. So I don't know what support costs. For support, great, but it's only greater than 27 nodes, you can get pricing. So not sure what's going on there, but I've never needed support. As long as it works, I'm cool with it. So we'll see. I mean, even if it is $50 a node, if that means per server, I'm cool paying $50 for my server, $50 for our developer server, however that turns out. So I'm going to learn more, and I'll provide an update when I do. Okay. So apparently I have a blog. It has been neglected because I choose to blather on these videos instead of spend the not insubstantial time required to create a blog post. But I had previously done a video on using, one moment, on using $metadata, $expand, OData query options, I think they're called, with the Business Central web APIs in order to get more information about the objects that are supported, like say customers or items, as well as the related records or child records or whatever they're called for those. So if you query customers, you can use the expand option to get contacts. And I explained in the prior video like why that was due to an architectural change. But so I did that video, learned about it, figured out how to use it. Great. Well, a couple months later, that was in June, now in October, September, just a couple months later, I'd completely forgotten how to do this and how to use this because I needed to research something. So I'm like, fine, went back to my video, had to watch my own video to remember how to do this. And so I figured if I'm having to do this twice, I'm going to have to do it a third and the fourth time in the future. So I wrote it down so it's more easily searchable. I can just scan it, find my own instructions, and refresh my memory. So there you go. There's a blog post on using metadata and expand. If you are using the Business Central APIs, web APIs, I recommend knowing about this. It's kind of a fundamental component of how those work and quickly determining what data elements are available in any given API endpoint. Okay. So Natalie, our BC Docs librarian, has very kindly shared something called partial diff, which I had never heard of before. It is a Visual Studio Code extension. It's pretty cool. You basically just highlight a chunk of code and you say that's sample 1 for partial diff. And then you highlight a second chunk of code, right click, section 2 for partial diff, and it will do a side-by-side diff showing you the difference. Like, awesome. I've often had to, copy and paste or throw things in Notepad or WordPad or Ultra Edit or whatever, and compare them side by side and try to scroll. And it's really, it's hokey. So this is a really cool extension that just diffs two pieces of text from the clipboard. Really, really neat. So check that out. So just random note, I have an LG smart TV. It's not very smart, but that's what they call it apparently. And the LG TV has, embedded apps, and your typical, it's like having the Roku or Apple TV or whatever right in the TV. I can watch YouTube or Netflix or HBO or whatever, Disney Plus, through the standard remote and watch those. And while it is very convenient, something about the LG TV, smart TV, at least my model, like normally it works fine, but sometimes it just goes berserk. It can't find the network. It can't connect. It says it's not connected, even though it is. All sorts of problems. And it's running on Wi-Fi right now. And when we're watching something, it'll be streaming fine. Then it'll just go crazy pixelated. Like in the middle of the movie at the peak action scene, it's just like 10 pixels, 10 blurry pixels on the screen. And you can hear the audio, but it's just this really choppy, totally pixelated video. So it's kind of a mess. No other devices in our house have this issue. And I have an Apple TV connected to the same television. It has no issues. So it is definitely the TV. So I was just asking whether people have their TVs hardwired. And what I think I'm going to do is figure out how to run a wire to this TV. I got to go through a wall, like I'm going to have to route through a wall, through our laundry room, out to the garage, to the nearest switch. Because like we have a 2-story house and it's a nightmare to run wires. So I think I can do that and figure out a way to get it hardwired and see if that solves the problem. Hopefully it does. And also, in the process of looking into this, my brother highly recommends the NVIDIA Shield as a smart TV device. Now, the only downside to this, and I have the same problem with Apple TV, is it's an extra remote. And the Apple TV remote, old one, is horrible. It's just the worst remote ever. The Apple TV interface I hate. It's just you're trying to jump around and the remote makes it really hard to navigate. And it's just all jumbled up with every single subscription service. You have no idea where you're supposed to look. So that's what I kind of like about the LG Smart TV. It's just dead simple. So I may try NVIDIA Shield, but anyway, it'll need to be wired. So maybe I'll run one wire to the nearby switch, have a switch near the TV, and have wired Ethernet through that local little switch to the TV, NVIDIA Shield, Apple TV, whatever. But that is a plan. And little side project here. This is a kind of a hobby, I guess, just something I found interesting. I find encryption, have found encryption and hashing very interesting for years, computer security type stuff. Obviously, if you've paid attention to my Twitter feed, networking stuff, networking security, firewalls, all that stuff, just find it interesting. So it's a hobby for me. And over the years, I have just tried various password cracking tools. So back in the day, there was a utility called LoftCrack, if you're familiar with them. And if you had a password protected Excel file, Access database, zip file, whatever, and you forgot the password or PDF, it's like, oh, I forgot the password of this. Or, like my CPA sends me my tax return in PDF, but there's a password. And if I don't write it down or remember what it is, it's like, I need my tax return, and you can't always remove the password, unfortunately. So I've used those utilities in the past to remove the password from certain files. And so I've also, years ago, I extracted the NTLM hashes from an Active Directory server, and it was probably Hashcat or John the Ripper, I don't remember back then, and ran the password cracking utility, as it's called, to find the passwords from that were present for the Active Directory users. And that was fascinating. It is unbelievably easy to do to determine the passwords for Windows network users using Hashcat. Like seconds, you can have hundreds of passwords matched there. And so this has just been a side hobby. It never had really any practical use. I've just done it for testing and learning. And randomly, out of the blue, someone contacted me and said, hey, I think I might, it's random, but just hear me out. I have this encrypted file and I don't remember the password. And is this something you'd be interested in kind of researching? And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I was like, yes, totally up my alley. So it's been years, so I had to refresh my memory on all of this stuff. I was able to extract a hash from the encrypted file using John the Ripper, actually not from the actual file. So I set up a test file, put a simple password on it, extracted the hash with John the Ripper, used Hashcat to determine my simple password, took 4 seconds, I think, for ABC123. So it's pretty powerful stuff. Now, what has also been very interesting is going from that, very basic hello world example of ABC123 to a real password. So no idea how long the real password is for this encrypted file. And the numbers of permutations for passwords are staggering. When you go from, say, if you have a 6-character password, you can brute force it relatively quickly, a couple hours. If you go to an 8 or 9-character password and you have no idea what the password is for a full brute force of all characters, you suddenly jump to 1,200 years. So from 6 to 9, it's like easy to literally impossible. And that's with even with a $120,000 GPU server, which you can rent it from Amazon for about $25,000 a month. So $25,000 a month cranking away on password cracking for a 9-character password can take 1,200 years. It's that crazy. And, a 9-character password really isn't that long for anything that you want secured properly. So, and it really depends on the algorithm, obviously. This was a more difficult algorithm that is relatively slow to crack. Whereas NTLM, you could blow through that probably in a couple hours. This particular one is much, much slower, so it requires massive GPU calculations. So fascinating. And in the process, I learned about a bunch of tools related to Hashcat. They're like supporting tools for Hashcat that optimize the cracking algorithm. So it's not brute forcing every single letter in the password, and it can handle variable length. And you can literally have a 90% reduction in the number of guesses you have to make based on these optimization tools. They do statistical analyses and come up with a plan to say, okay, yes, you have a 15-character password, but we know that that 15 character password is not 100% symbols. We know it's not 100% letters, and we know it's not 100% upper or lowercase. So it comes up with it has an algorithm to come up with a plan to crack that 15 character password in an optimal manner. And it can literally result in nearly a 90% reduction in the number of tries you have to take. And it's just like, whoa, mind blowing. And if it is a human generated password, there are even better techniques. They have all sorts of just crazy techniques for dictionary attacks against these passwords that are highly successful, like 90% success rate on human generated passwords, like, watermelon 53 or, Olympia 2021, whatever word year combination, words, numbers, upper lowercase combinations with maybe one or two symbols. It is just shocking how efficient it is at determining those passwords through guessing. And so related to that is a tool set called Kali Linux. And I've never really heard of this before until recently, but apparently it is a Linux distro. I don't know what the underlying distro is, if it's like Ubuntu or something else, open FreeBSD. But apparently it's a Linux distro that whatever distro they use that is security and penetration testing friendly, but apparently it comes pre-installed with all of these tools that you would want for network security, password cracking, network analysis, and all of these things just pre-built is my understanding. So I've ordered a new SSD for an old laptop. So rather than rebuild that laptop and wipe off Windows, I'm just going to pop out that SSD, pop in the new M.2, install a Kali Linux distribution. And I hate Linux. I'm terrible with it. It's massive, disastrous time suck. Every time I touch Linux, it's like 8 hours goodbye. But I'm going to give it a try because that's what everyone uses in this space, apparently. I'm using Hashcat on Windows now, but some of the tools are just pre-compiled for Linux, so it's much easier for me to try some of them on Kali. So anyway, that's just kind of my random journey. So I thought that was like just fascinating series of events that someone randomly calls me and asks me about that. And one thing I'm learning that I'm going to also test is for years ago, I developed this .NET app because I got sick of generating thinking of my own passwords. I hate the truly random passwords generated by password managers. I am learning those are potentially the most secure, but as you can imagine, if you've ever had to manually type one of those in, it is an absolute nightmare. And I often have to type in passwords on a mobile device, and try doing a 15-character truly random password on a mobile device, just like you'll give up. And if that's your smart TV, just game over. So it discourages you from having secure passwords, I find. So this was my compromise after seeing the XKCD Battery Horse Staple, whatever, that comic. I thought, oh, well, this is clever. Let me use dictionary words randomly generated. And they're really kind of bizarre dictionary words like ice boxes and peristyle. Like they're not your typical password dictionary attack type words. And I have all sorts of options just to kind of mix things up. Well, I'm learning that with the Hashcat helper functions and the dictionary attack methodologies, I thought I was like totally in the clear here, right? This is a 23-character password with 2 random words, minimum or up to 10 characters each, plus symbols, plus numbers, plus upper and lowercase. I thought I was clever, right? Because if you enter this into a password length security safety checker, it'll say, wow, 10 million years to crack this. Not true. From what I can tell, I've only watched 1 or 2 videos on it, using the Hashcat password mask features, you can use these utilities to generate thousands of different masks, as I mentioned, to reduce your key space or search space by like 90%. I'm going to bet, if I had a full dictionary that had all my words, so this 105,000 word dictionary that I'm using to generate these, if that was available to Hashcat, I'm going to guess that with a Hashcat password mask, this could be cracked in less than 20 minutes, which is shocking. I previously thought this was not possible. I did have a chat with someone on Twitter who he wasn't familiar with the details, but he said his team in the security review and pen testing world, his team has tools that can do this. And I thought, come on, that's crazy. Like 2 random words out of 105,000 with symbols and letters. He was absolutely right. As long as you understand the pattern and you can do statistical analysis on any other passwords that were found within an organization. If someone knows my password generation algorithm here, which is, it's not shockingly complex, Hashcat will be able to crack that. So now I'm like, oh boy, it's just shocking. So now that I'm learning this, I'm going to deploy Hashcat, learn how to use these password masks, and throw in my dictionary list to support that. Obviously, that's kind of contrived since I know what 105,000 words I'm using, which would be less likely to be in a typical dictionary. But I'm going to guess less than 30 minutes to crack this 23-character complex passphrase, right? And it has me thinking like, great, how do I mix this up? And so, yes, this predictable pattern is the flaw. And knowing anything about the pattern that is used in generating these passwords makes them vastly easier to predict. So one number, I ran some numbers on a 7-character password. If you know absolutely nothing about it, without any password masks, just do a full brute force of uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols. It would be, it's like, say, 65 trillion combinations, and it takes, say, a year. If you know just one character, the first character, whether that is upper or lower or a digit or a symbol, and let's just guess that it's an uppercase letter, that reduces your attack space by 35%. And maybe I did the math wrong in the Excel spreadsheet. It is staggering. So if you have the slightest clue how that password might be generated, if it was generated by a human, there are lots of behavioral clues in passwords. 35% reduction in key space from one character, having any idea what one of the characters is. And that'll vary dramatically. But now that I know my password technique, I'm going to guess that I can crack it. So this is just a fun exercise. This is what I do on evenings and weekends, folks. And so with that somewhat embarrassing admission of my hobby, have a good Friday and have a good weekend. Enjoy. Go break something. Okay. Talk to you later.
Do do do